Conveyancers for Change is a podcast that pulls back the curtain on the legal property industry and beyond, unpacking the issues that matter in 2022 and spotlighting the change makers in a profession that can be highly stressful and incredibly rewarding in equal measures. Expect discussions that challenge the norm and aim to drive change in the conveyancing industry and beyond. My name is Vikki and I'm a formal commercial paralegal with a law degree, and I'll be hosting the podcast with the incredible Aconveyancing, who are a conveyancing firm championing change in the legal industry for legal professionals. The topic of this podcast is a sensitive but hugely important topic of conversation, and that is loss of pregnancy and general bereavement support in the workplace. Now, I think we can all agree that nothing truly prepares you for losing someone you love. Bereavement can trigger a wave of emotions from shock to anger, confusion, disbelief, guilt, depression and sadness, which can lead to moments when you feel like you'll never be able to engage in normal life again. And if you work, with that comes the question, how on earth am I going to face going back to work again? How am I going to be able to do my job properly when I'm going through this? It is so important that employers support those going through bereavement, especially for those working in people-facing roles where you have to be on it at all times and you have to perform. Or if you work in a demanding, high-pressure environment like the legal industry, where stress and therefore high emotions are already part of the job, you might be thinking, how on earth am I going to juggle and cope with all the stress? Joining us today, we have Hannah Johnson, who is Aconveyancing's client relationship manager and has personal experience of baby loss and coping with that heartbreak and trauma whilst in employment. We also have Amy Jackson dialing in, who is the founder of the Lily Mae Foundation, who do amazing work to support parents following the loss of their babies. And the foundation was established in 2010 following the loss of her own baby, Lily Mae. So Amy, we'd love to start with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously it's such a sensitive topic of conversation, but we really think that it needs to be had more, this conversation. Yeah. So would you like to start by telling us a little bit about the foundation and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so we set up the foundation following the loss of our daughter, Lily Mae, in 2010. We achieved charitable status in 2012, and basically the charity has grown from then. To begin with, we just set about to build memory boxes. So after losing Lily, we kind of discovered there were pockets of bits of support and really practical things that were kind of missing, and memory boxes was one of those things. So to begin with, I just started building some memory boxes to give back to the hospital that we were in. Purely as a bit of a distraction, but again to help other people that I knew were unfortunately going to follow in our footsteps. So that just grew, it took off, and the hospitals really appreciated and liked the boxes. And to begin with, as I said, we put them into a couple of our local hospitals, and now that's spread, and we put them in 11 hospitals within the West Midlands. And for anybody who doesn't know what a memory box is, firstly, you're quite lucky. But secondly, it's giving that family the opportunity to make precious memories of their babies in such kind of a short time. When you lose a baby, you do have a very limited time to make those memories. So we thought by kind of putting those things in the box ready, the families have got them there at their fingertips and can be talked through with the bereavement midwives, and they can capture some really kind of precious memories of their babies. Charity then continued to grow, and now we offer one-to-one support for anybody that's been affected by a baby. So whether that's a mom, dad, grandparents, aunt, uncle, we provide one-to-one support, and we also provide support meetings. So again, it's an opportunity for people who've been affected by baby loss to kind of join together to be able to talk about their loss, to share experiences, to kind of help alleviate a lot of the feelings of isolation that come with baby loss.
That's such incredible work. So you've had that charitable status for 10 years now as well.
Yeah, just coming up 10 years, yeah.
Oh, amazing.
We've got a party planned.
I was going to ask, have you got a party planned? Yeah, that's
We've
amazing.
got a party planned for October, yeah.
Oh, so the 10-year anniversary, which is incredible. And I guess it's one of those things, isn't it, where nobody teaches you how to deal with, the loss of a loved one. There's no rule book on it. And then the loss of a baby, you know, loss of pregnancy. It's such a difficult and sensitive topic. And I guess it's one of those things where, unless you've been through it, it's really, really hard to understand. So to be able to come to the foundation for that support is just incredible. Would you say as well, because obviously on this podcast we're going to talk about bereavement in general as well, and, you know, coping with that whilst you're working. How would you say, or would you say, you know, loss of a baby and loss of pregnancy is different in terms to like loss of a loved one? Because I think it is just such a huge challenge and a difficult challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, I think there's some similarities in terms of grief in general, but I think, baby loss in itself is very different to a lot of other things. And you do get a lot of people say, oh yeah, well, I've lost a grandparent. So I kind of understand. You kind of go, yeah, you kind of do, but actually, no, you don't. And I think it is one of those things that until you've kind of walked in these shoes, you have no clue of the impact and how far reaching that is, and how it literally impacts on everything kind of in your life moving forward. Yeah.
And obviously, Hannah, for you, to bring you into the conversation, this is something obviously very close to your heart.
Yeah.
You've experienced it and gone through it. Would you like to talk to us a little bit about your experience?
So mine was going back a couple of years now. It's coming up to 4 years this month, where I had a miscarriage. And even now, it's very much, you have that conversation with someone and it's like, oh, I just had a miscarriage.
Yeah.
Like, I just miscarried. And it's like, no, you didn't just miscarry. You had a loss. You suffered a loss. And it took a long time to kind of accept that and go, actually, I've got every right to kind of grieve this loss. I don't need to bury it. And it's sometimes it takes for you to say, oh, that's happened to me, for someone to go, oh, actually, that's happened to me too. Or I went through this, or I lost my baby. And it's like, well, why does it take for someone to share their experiences, for someone to reach out and offer you that support? It should be there from the outset of, you know, going through that. It's not, for me, it wasn't like an overnight thing. It was like, right, that's it, you've miscarried, that's done. It was a case of a 4-day period where I was in and out of hospital, going back for doctor's appointments, you know, kind of begging for answers, because no one could give me them until they referred me. And again, there was no support in the meantime, while I was like, well, what is happening? What's going on? And I was very hopeful, kind of almost naive to baby loss or miscarriages, stillbirths, all that kind of thing. I'd never really known of it. And, you know, you know it happens, but you think, oh, no, not to me. Like,
Yeah.
And you just carry on and you go, no, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. And then as that 4-day period drew to the 4th day, which is when I went to hospital, I finally got a scan, and the sonographer turned around and says, I'm really sorry, you know, there's no heartbeat, you've probably passed it already. And there was it was like, okay, well, what now? What do I do? Why has this happened? And they can't give you those answers, understandably, especially for me. I was, on this day, I was 8 weeks and 4 days, and it was like, well, there's no reason, these things just happen. Let's just put you in another room and you can let it sink in. And it was like, me and my partner got showed to a little room with no windows. Like,
the room of doom, we call it.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It was like a little box room. And I remember we kind of both sat there and were like, well, what
now?
Like, what happens? Like, why has this happened? What, like, you can't comprehend what's going on at that time. And obviously we were both like distraught, emotional. My partner was like, I need air, and he had to walk out and go and get some fresh air because he was just overwhelmed. And I remember just sitting there in this room, and there was a notice board on the wall, and there was a leaflet on the wall, and it said something like, pregnancy loss, miscarriage, stillbirth, all these words around it. And it had 4 little women pictures, like a paper chain, and it was like 1 in 4.
What?
And I remember looking at it and just staring at this picture on the wall thinking, 1 in 4, and it's not talked about. And again, going through that whole experience personally has made me think, well, hold on a sec, why suffer and why think about these things on your own? There should be, and there is, thanks to things like the Lily Mae Foundation, the support for these people that are going through that, and it's very much like, sadly my friend went through it last year where she miscarried, and the first person she came to was me, because she didn't know anyone else that had a miscarriage. And it wasn't that she didn't know anyone else, it was only when she said, actually, I've miscarried, other people were like, oh yeah, my friend, that happened to my friend, that happened to my sister. And again, it's waiting for that conversation to start, which happens too late in most cases for the support to be offered. There needs to be more support and more education prior to it even happening, so that people know where to go.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. So what did you do after that then? Where did you turn for this support that you needed?
After being stuck in, as Amy called it, the room of doom, I like that phrase.
Oh my gosh.
It was, right, we're now going to take you to see a specialist midwife. And we were like, okay, that's fine. And we kind of gathered things together, composed ourselves a little bit. Went through to this appointment, and the midwife was asking loads of questions, and it's very much a blur, this little meeting that we had. I can't remember it because I just remember being like almost spaced out, like not processing anything. And she asked us all the questions, and it was very much like, right, we'll do this, we'll do that. It sounds like, and it looks like from your scans, that you've passed most of, obviously, the baby. And we probably don't need to see you again, but in however many weeks you need to do a pregnancy test, we'll call you and we'll make sure it's negative. If it's not negative, we'll do it again in a couple of weeks, and then so on and so forth. It was further investigations after that if the test was still showing positive. And it was like, here's some leaflets.
Oh, wow.
On your way. And it was like, okay then. And I remember getting in the car and coming home and just literally being like in silence almost, like apart from the radio in the background. And it was very much like sort your own way through it from that point of view. We'd got a little pack of like information, and it was like, why has this happened? And it was like, there's no reasonable or logical explanation, scientific explanation or anything. And it was all kind of notes. And I remember getting home and just spending the rest of the day in bed, like not wanting to move, like zoning out in my bedroom, like just kind of wanting to be left alone. And again, it was that feeling of you're alone, like you don't know where to turn. And that's when one of the leaflets in the pack, and also someone pointed me in that direction, was Lily Mae Foundation. And I remember it took me a few days to kind of put my head around it, but I remember going onto Facebook and liking their page, and just knowing that there was a group or a charity or a foundation, anything, just knowing that that's out there should you need it, was like someone had come and put an arm around you and gone, there's people here to support you. And I was really fortunate. I had really supportive family. Those that knew, again, because it happens so early on, a lot of the time people around you don't even know you're pregnant because of the whole wait till you're 12 weeks. And a lot of people didn't even know I was pregnant. So I'd told very few people. I'd actually told work, because there was quite a few people at work pregnant at the same time. So it kind of, when we were talking about pregnancies, it kind of felt fitting to go, actually, I'm pregnant. So they all knew about it. And yeah, as I say, I was really, really lucky. Like I had, my mum was really, really supportive of both me and my partner, because I think, again, men often, they kind of put that bravado on and they're like, yeah, I'm okay. But they're going through it just as much as you are.
100%. And your story, I know Amy nodding along throughout that, it sounds all too familiar, I guess.
Yeah. And I think what's worse is that's almost a good example of care. A lot of our ladies that come to us have had kind of not even that bare minimum. It's almost like, oh yeah, this is the news now. There's the door. Or just crack on, you'll be fine, kind of thing. And I think that, coming back to what Hannah said before, that kind of feeling of, oh, you should just get on and it's not spoken about, it almost starts there, because nobody in hospital really says, actually, this is going to be tough, or you might feel like this, or you might want to reach out. So again, it's kind of like all your feelings are invalid, because nobody is saying, oh, actually, it's okay if you feel like this, or you reach out for support. It's just like, here's your pack, off you go, crack on, basically.
Here's real life. You've now got to go back to normal life, to work, put on a brave face. And again, you don't have someone there holding your hand or putting an arm around you, showing you or telling you how to do it and making sure that you're okay. How did you find sort of going back to work afterwards?
So I always use the term, I was fortunate. No one's ever fortunate in that situation, but I was fortunate in that when my miscarriage was confirmed, it happened on a Thursday, and on the following Monday, me and my partner were due to go to Spain. So we'd got a week's annual leave booked off. We were like, okay, we'll take some time for ourselves. We'll go and process this. So I kind of came home on the Thursday, spent the Friday wallowing. I had an amazing family member in my auntie. She came and got me on the Saturday, took me and my partner back to hers, and she was like, right, come on, you can face the world almost, like, it's okay. And she took me, got my nails done, she bought me a charm for my bracelet, took us out for dinner, you know, and it just took us away from that. We then went to Spain, had a lovely few days in the sun, but again, it was kind of just, you're just in that lull of what has happened, like what is happening.
You're existing.
It is, it's very much existing. And it was the reality of it. It was like, almost going to Spain, while I see it, it was a blessing because me and my partner got that time together and we spent that time together. It was almost kind of the opposite of a blessing, because it was then getting on that plane to come home and going, we've got to face reality now. And it was like we'd hidden from it. And then it was, right, Monday morning, you're back to work. And now I was working in a childcare setting at the time, so completely the opposite to office work. And again, I was in a good position that a lot of the women that I worked with had, you know, similar experiences, or they'd had a family member go through something and they were really empathetic. But it was that wave, I remember just feeling like coming back from Spain, coming back home, the reality hitting me, and then going, I've got to face work on Monday morning. And I work with children, ranging from babies to preschoolers, and that almost fear of going into work and just having a complete breakdown. And I remember keeping it together all day on the Monday. We're going back to work and getting home and just literally letting it all out, because it was the kind of, again, the facing the reality of it is when you lose a baby, and I'm sure Amy will agree with me on this, I always say when you lose a baby, you're not just losing the baby, you're losing the future with that baby. And for me, it was like watching these children do all these little things. And I'm like, okay, well, my baby should have done that, and I've just gone through this. And it was very much, okay, well, you're back to work, you're back at it. And it was trying to comprehend those feelings while also show face at work. And as I say, I had brilliant colleagues at the time that were really supportive. But again, it was kind of like, it's happened, let's move on, like, let's not dwell on it.
Yeah, so I guess you were lucky in the sense that you were surrounded by women or people that could relate to you, and they were supportive, and they would know she's holding it all together. She's going to go home, she's going to let it all out, or if she needs to go into the toilet and, you know, you just do your thing.
You just do it.
So it's amazing that you had that support around you. Amy, would you say that it's typical of employers to provide that sort of support in, you know, your experience, or
I wouldn't say it's typical, no, and I think it really depends on the workplace and the environment and the managers, I hate to say it, and quite often if you get a manager that, like you say, has either got some experience or is really empathetic and can kind of just read and has got those kind of personal skills, then it can be such a helpful thing to go back into work. But for a lot of people, sadly, it's not that case. And it is that case of they see you back at work and they say all the right things to begin with, like, we're going to take it easy and we're going to do this and we're going to put this in place for you. But then, as you know, a lot of workplaces are high stress, they're kind of fast moving. And once you're back in, you're you're another body, aren't you? And they see you looking okay, like you say, with your face on, back at work, looking like you're coping, and they quickly forget what you've just been through. And it goes from like all the promises of, yeah, we're going to do this, to actually, do you know what? Oh, can you just do this? And it's almost like you say, back to normality, and you're expected to just carry on. I almost describe it as kind of like, I felt like I was living a double life. So I used to have like this work person that would appear, and then I'd have the person that appeared when I got home and shut the door, and nobody saw both of those. I either got one or the other. And you were supposed to just carry on. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's typical of a work environment to be that supportive, unfortunately.
And what advice would you give to employers to better support women, or even, you know, men that have gone through losing a child?
I think quite often it's that being able to take a step back and be empathetic to the situation, and understand that actually some days you are absolutely fine and you can manage and you can cope, and then other days you might just be having a really rubbish day for no reason whatsoever, and find things a bit tough. So it's that kind of understanding that actually putting pressure on sometimes isn't very helpful, because some days you can do it, some days you can't. And actually, if you get an employer that understands that and kind of goes, that you feel able to go to and say, actually, do you know what, I'm having a bit of a rough day today, I'm still here, I'm still going to try, instantly that pressure is kind of off yourself, so it kind of works better. A lot of my families that go back to work and it is successful, do a phased return, again, because it takes that pressure off, and it's building yourself up slowly and going, actually, yeah, I can cope with that and I can cope with that. But I think a lot of it comes down to communication, and kind of good communication between the employee and the employer, so that they can both understand where each other are at almost.
Yeah, I guess that's it. And it's making sure, like you were saying, it's wanting to have someone to speak to, but almost feeling like, I don't even know if I can have this conversation, or what on earth do I say? Who do I turn to? Hannah, having, you know, been through it yourself, if there's any listeners that have been through it, what advice or words of support would you offer to them?
So from an employment point of view, and obviously since then I've completely changed my role, and I've come back and I'm now, you know, starting to progress into a management level. So I look at it and I just think, just be open. There's no, with all grief, I don't think there's any one size fits all with how people heal and how people, you know, kind of get over it, if they ever do get over it. And, you know, people don't just get over a loss. They need time to heal, whether that's their grandparent, their dog, their baby. Just be there for your employee. Have an open door policy that if you need to, I'm here. I understand that you might not want to talk to me about it, but if you want to, I'm there. Having that little bit of support is probably more to a lot of people, like knowing they can go to them for support, or in any case, just knowing that that person is there should they want to talk, is more than that person will ever realise. So just literally just be present, be there, be open, and don't kind of, as I say, don't have that one size fits all. No, they're back at work, they're fine, because in most cases they're probably not.
And I guess it's exactly like you say, it's allowing that person to talk when they're ready, because everyone is going to experience it differently. Or some people, the adrenaline or the shock, you can be like, I'm fine, and genuinely
4 months down the line it hits.
Exactly. In terms of people being able to access the Lily Mae Foundation, Amy, where can people find you? How can people find you?
So as Hannah found us, so we're on Facebook, social media, Instagram, Twitter. We've got a website with a lot of information on, and all our contact details in terms of telephone and stuff are on there as well. And we've done things in terms of speaking to employers as well. So if people are struggling in terms of, actually my employer doesn't get it and they want us to either send some information or signpost, we can do things like that as well. We very much respond to kind of individual needs, and like Hannah was just saying, we go with, actually one size doesn't fit at all. And I think when you've been through something like this, you go, actually what they like or what works for them that's my worst nightmare. So we very much respond to kind of individual needs. If there's something that somebody goes, actually, this might be helpful for me, we're forever kind of helping and wanting to evolve.
And I guess that like evolution, it employs being able to offer that flexibility so that however someone is coping or not coping, they can support it the best way that that person needs it. And that obviously applies to, you know, loss of a loved one for anyone. What advice, if you could just literally give like a couple of sentences of advice to, you know, a leadership team in a company, what would you say to them, Amy?
I think I would say go and talk to that person and see what suits them, because the stories that come back, they're always like, oh God, this happened and it was horrendous, are the ones where managers have assumed and it's been the wrong assumption, and that's kind of caused more damage and more upset than actually if they'd have gone to the employer and say, what would work for you, or how would you like me to handle this, and kind of done it right. So again, I'd come back to that communication and just say, don't make any assumptions that this is how they feel or this is what's going to work best for them, but kind of put yourself out that comfort zone and do that communication, no matter how hard it is for you, but it's going to pay off in the long run.
Definitely. And I guess it's that thing of just sitting down with someone and saying, this isn't a meeting about your performance or this or that. I just want to ask, how are you?
Yeah.
How are you doing? Did you have that support after you went through what you went through, Hannah?
Going back to work, again, it's kind of merged into a blur of a horrific 6-week period, I'd say, and it very much like merges in. I don't recall having a sit down with a manager or a supervisor. I remember everyone being like, are you okay? And just kind of been like, yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine, like, I'm all right. And, you know, I look back on me and I think, you should have been honest. Like, you should have said, no, actually, I'm not okay. Like, please don't put me in the baby room today. Like, please don't do that to me. Instead of going, yeah, I'm fine, like, I'll just crack on. And I think someone approaching you going, actually, let's sit down. Are you okay? And having that genuine kind of concern, that genuine conversation with someone, rather than just being like, morning, you're right, yeah, carry on, like making my cup of tea while I'm doing it. Yeah. It's a whole different ballgame. And maybe if that had have been done, it would have been more of an open conversation. Well, actually, no, I am struggling, like I'm not with it. You know, my partner, we went through issues of our own, trying to both deal with it. And, you know, it was very much I'd go to work and I'd try not to talk about it because I didn't want to, but had someone come and said, like, actually, are you okay? It probably would have been a different reaction.
Yeah, and I guess there's that whole thing with returning back to normality and reality with work. But what about if you've got, you know, kids or other responsibilities as well? What's that sort of process, Amy, like getting back to like functioning back to normality as normal it can be after what, you know, people have been through?
I think it's, with a lot of people, we talk about a new normal, so you're never going to be that exact same person that you were before. And I think a lot of people desperately want you to be, because they don't want to see you sad, they don't want to see you upset, they want to see you cracking on in your job as normal kind of thing. And that doesn't come from a bad place. It comes from a place of they want you to be okay. They don't want to see you suffering. So I think it's talking to people about a new normal, and actually if that's different, then that's absolutely fine. There's going to be old bits of you that are still there, but to expect that you are going to be exactly the same and be able to cope and respond in all the ways that you did before might be expecting the impossible. So again, it's taking it case by case. For some people, they might find comfort in going, right, I can go back to do my work, I can do this, I can have those bits of normality back in, when other parts of my life are so abnormal almost. But for others, it's kind of like, actually, no, I don't want to be treated exactly the same. I don't want it to be brushed under the carpet. Just recently, the story that's popping into my mind is I had a girl go back to work after losing her son quite late in pregnancy, and her manager had sent an email around the night before saying, do not mention it, just do not mention her son, do not mention his name, thinking that was going to be the best way, because she was coming back to work. And so of course she returned to work, and it was like this horrible, like nobody basically acknowledged why she was off. She was 40 weeks pregnant, and they were all kind of saying things like, oh, your hair looks nice, oh, have you had your hair dyed, oh, have you got on a holiday book, blah blah blah. And it was just the weirdest thing, and it turned out that it had come from this, whereas actually no, she wanted her son's name mentioned, she wanted that acknowledgement, she didn't want to talk about it all day long, but she wanted it acknowledged as well, and not just kind of like you say, oh, let's push it under the carpet because actually we don't know how to talk about it.
And I guess with that then people should feel comfortable to have that conversation, to be like, what is best for you? How can I, support you in the best way possible? Because you cannot make assumptions, can you? Because all sorts are going to be then flying through the mind. Oh God!
But then for some people, it's that's actually what they want. They want to return to work, and they want that normal, and they don't want anyone to talk about it. And again, it's that's absolutely fine if that's how you want to deal with any of those. But actually, your manager knowing what's best for you rather than just making those assumptions either way is the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely. And what would you say in terms of, you've obviously got your 10-year anniversary coming up. Over the 10 years, do you feel like the move towards supporting parents that have lost babies, children that have been through these experiences, do you feel like the awareness is growing, or do you still feel like there's a lot of work to be done? Because I wasn't aware of that 1 in 4 statistic, and you weren't aware until you were sat in that room as well.
I feel that in the past, so since we lost Lily 12 years ago, I feel like it really was a massively taboo subject that was not even touched upon. And I think, like Hannah said right at the beginning, it's only when you start speaking, it's like people come out of the woodwork and you learn things that you kind of never knew. But it shouldn't be like that. But I do think the profile has grown, but it's still nowhere near what it should be. And when you kind of think of other things, things like cancer, that yes, they're much more widely talked about, everyone knows about them, it is still an area that is a very, very taboo area. So it is changing, but slowly.
Yeah, and I guess that, like you said, it's one of those experiences that once you've gone through, like you called it, like the new normal, you have to live with that and cope with that forever. Hannah, what's your sort of journey and experience been like since going through it? And obviously you've got this new role.
Yeah, so for me it was very much, as I said, kind of back to reality, mask over it, right, let's crack on. My partner kind of I crumbled first and my partner stayed strong for me. We kind of went back to reality and it kind of had the flip effect. He went back to work, he crumbled, he needed me. And as I said, that's where I come into the 6 weeks of my life that I've just boxed in a part of my brain that I don't pull out very often. And, we went through that journey together. We quite quickly fell pregnant with my little boy, who's now 3. So that was, count our blessings every day for Charlie. And having him was a massive part of my recovery. I remember my pregnancy being an absolute whirlwind of emotions, from anxiety to guilt, feeling, has this happened too quick? This, I like an element of almost, you feel you're absolutely over the moon that you're pregnant and it's the best feeling in the world, worry that, is this going to happen again? And then that kind of, as I say, guilt that I don't want it to look like I'm like replacing or trying to, mask over anything by having a baby. But at the same time, it's what I want. It's what I ultimately want. And, trying to kind of preserve a memory for the baby we would have had, and we did that in ways such as we named a star. As I said, I've got a charm on my bracelet. I had a necklace for Mother's Day that I wear every day, and it's got 2 birthstones on, which are Charlie's, who was born in March, and the baby that we lost that we do have a nickname for. But again, that's something that me and my partner share, which is April. So I have both of them on my necklace. And again, kind of building that awareness for myself. I remember trawling Google when it happened and going, why have I miscarried? What have I caused this? What has happened? And trawling the internet, trying to find answers, and actually going, no, this isn't helping me. I need to kind of raise my own individual awareness of how I can better support friends or family that, God forbid, ever go through a similar similar experience. How can I best support them? And Amy's charity, Lily Mae Foundation, is something that I massively signpost people to should I ever come across it, and thankfully it is few and far between. But I'm always like, Lily Mae are there, they're there, they do, you know, they're massive ambassadors, and they do things like the Wave of Light. That's another thing that massively helps me. That's an event that happens, I believe, yearly, Amy?
Yeah.
Where you light a candle, and it doesn't have to be someone that's gone through that. It can be anyone in support of, you know, any aspect of life where they're recognising that pregnancy and, you know, that loss. Little things like that, you know, an employer could pop a candle on the, you know, reception desk and light it on the day, you know, even though it takes place in the evening, just that little bit of acknowledgement.
Little touches.
And finding those little things massively helped me get through, you know, where my due date would have been, where it comes to the yearly anniversary. You know, I always feel a bit of a lull, you know, in April, and I'm like, I know that this is approaching 4 years this year, and I get that kind of impending wave of, you know, like really almost reliving it in your head, and it's finding ways to cope with that, and little things like the Wave of Light or a necklace or talking to people is just a massive coping mechanism. And that's what I think the majority of the last 4 years have consisted of, are building knowledge and building kind of coping mechanisms, especially to kind of put not a front up, but to be able to sit and speak about my experience without absolutely crumbling and, you know, going into full-on meltdown mode, which would have happened had I been sat here, say, 2 years ago, a year ago. I probably would have had a very different kind of reaction to talking about my experiences. But just definitely finding your own way to cope and to recognise and remember what you've been through.
Definitely. Amy, Hannah mentioned, is it the Wave of Light? Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so every year there is Baby Loss Awareness Week, which runs from the 9th to the 15th of October. And the end of Baby Loss Awareness Week is marked with what's called the Wave of Light. So that is 15th of October every year, 7 p.m. So wherever you are in the world, at 7 p.m. you're meant to light a candle to remember all those babies. So it's obviously a continuous wave of light across the world through all the time zones. And I think, as Hannah said, just having those little things that work for you, that just make you feel like you are still acknowledging them, and you're validating all those feelings that you might still have, just really help with kind of coping, like Hannah said, and getting through those years and acknowledging what you have been through, and that actually, if you're feeling that way, it's absolutely okay and it's valid to feel like that.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's a thing that we do every year, and anybody can get involved, as Hannah said, just lighting a candle.
And that's what I love as well. It brings people together that have been through it, but even just friends and family. And I love what you said about having an employer like light a candle for you. Or it's just the little gestures that make you feel like, I'm with you. I've
it's just acknowledging it, isn't it? It's like you say, having somebody just seeing that, and you kind of go, oh, actually that's acknowledging my loss and acknowledging my baby, and just perk you up.
Yeah, definitely. This has been amazing. I feel like we could talk even more about it, but honestly it's been so touching, and it's so important to, you know, raise awareness of it. And thank you so much, both of you, for being so brave and, you know, sharing your experiences. And hopefully this will, you know, we can reach listeners out there that, you know, really find comfort in this as well, or maybe they didn't know about the foundation and they can, you know, reach out to you guys, get in contact for their support. Could you just remind people as well, if they do want to contact or donate as well, how people can find you?
Yeah, so our website is the Lily Mae Foundation, and if you just Google us, no matter how you spell Lily Mae, it will come up with us. Facebook, just search the Lily Mae Foundation. Just get in contact, and if you've got any questions, drop us an email or phone us.
Amazing, thank you so much. And we'll pop a link to your website actually in the podcast description, so if anyone wants to check out the foundation or get in touch, it will be there. Thank you both so much, so honest, so brave, and obviously the Lily Mae Foundation is doing such incredible work. You've got your party in October as well for the 10-year anniversary, which is amazing. But yeah, thank you so much. And I'm so impressed as well, Lola, your office dog, It's been so quiet throughout.
She's still asleep. She's still fast asleep. We're all right.
She's very well trained. Amazing. Thank you both again. Thank you to all our listeners. And yeah, we'll see you for the next episode. Thank you.